Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week here on 1029 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. So excited to be back with everyone. We got my tag team partner back, Kevin Midget. We're like the Road Warriors, the old WWE days. I don't know if people remembers those guys, but man, Jim Laurinaitis, that was his father, Road Warrior Hawk Animal. So I guess you'll be. I'll call you Hawk. I'll take the animal.
So
How you doing,
Angel
Kevin?
Angel becomes the manager of Paul Ellering at that point.
Oh, see, I love it. Kevin's old
Yeah.
school. See, they're WWE Hall of Famers. Those guys, and some people they're like, just talk football, But I always loved WWE when I was a kid, and now that I'm older, though, you're like. Yeah, it's a bit much. and the stars aren't even as good as they used to be. So,
Oh no, the personalities and everything else, no doubt.
no, but yeah. But definitely got to talk about what a crazy period last week was in terms of, and we talked a little bit about it last week on Monday, but this week that's just passed, it's free agency around the National Football League. And Kevin, it's crazy because the NFL always makes sure they're on the front page. You have baseball spring training, you got March Madness in terms of college basketball, the NBA's out there, but everybody's only talking about football still. And it's amazing how they've done this. The cap has gone up to $255.4 million, up $30 million per team. And a lot of these teams went spending like a housewife at Neiman Marcus with a charge card. So, Kevin, we got to start right here in Philadelphia, where I'm based out of, and you are kind of too. Saquon Barkley, Philadelphia Eagle. They give him a 3-year, $37.75 million contract, which could go up to $46.75 million and includes $26 million guaranteed. Good move, bad move by the Eagles. Excited, not excited. What do you think?
I think for a league that's so pass heavy, pass oriented, running backs are cashing some checks now. Some running backs are actually getting a little bit of money here, and it's kind of nice to see. As an Eagle supporter, I would put it that way. I'm an Eagle realist, is more like I like to think of myself. I would have been all right with keeping Swift and using that money for more defensive purposes myself. But Saquon, once again, you have to take away the whole giant stigmatism. Is rooting for the guy wearing the other laundry. Kind of like when DeMarco Murray came here. Once again, you still have the bad taste of that in your mouth. I think that was more of a Chip Kelly deal than anything. Because after Murray left, I believe he led the league in rushing after that, the season he left. So with Saquon, the only thing, once again, this is just the Eagle fan in me, is saying he was healthy last year. When Saquon's healthy, he's one of the best blocking running backs in the league as well. That helps him out. He's a 3-down running back. But that being said, is he going to stay healthy for 2 years in a row?
Yeah. And it's crazy. Everybody was like, Howie Roseman, and he did. When I went and looked at the deals and things that the Eagles did, they did a nice job filling some of the holes. But as I could kind of feel you alluding to, this season is not won here in March and pre-draft and so forth, because a lot of teams get excited about these free agency signings, and next thing you know, you have like an Albert Hainsworth situation when he signed with the Washington Redskins back in the day, a guy they gave all that money to, and was kind of a disappointment. So, you got to say good moves so far, but you got to wait and see, in my opinion.
Well, it's the whole, once again, as an Eagle fan, everything's always negative that you go back to when the Eagles try to do something positive. It's the dream team mentality when they signed all the guys,
Right.
and you brought them in and they spent the money. And on paper, it looks like what they've done, actually, I like. But at the same time, I don't know. You never know till they played out. And it also goes to the fact that the Eagles have not done well drafting as well. Some of the defensive areas that they need the help in, secondary and linebacker. So, I mean, if it was an offensive line or defensive line, we're okay. We're okay. But the fact is, with the other holes they have, we shall see.
Yeah, and Saquon, I think with Kellen Moore coming over as the offense coordinator, he is a little better picking up the blitz and pass protection than DeAndre Swift. So I think that was one of the reasons they brought him in. But they got to use him in terms of swing passes, get him in the slot. Because last year DeAndre Swift only had 39 catches. They were not throwing the ball to their running backs. I don't know if Jalen doesn't like the swing passes or what it is, but they have to use him. That's a large amount of money. He's now the second paid, highest paid running back in the NFL behind Christian McCaffrey. So they got to use him up at 27. Hopefully, by the time he's 30, they've gotten 2, 3 good years out of him, and then it's wait and see.
Exactly. And it goes back to the fact, too, as good as the Eagles' offensive line has been, I mean, it's been a given for the past few years. There's going to be some little bit of difference and change right now, with Cam Jurgens, what you're going to do with him, and Driscoll left also today, and it's like you got some little areas you got to kind of
Right.
shore up.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten to talk to you since the big news drop in terms of there was 2 retirements around the Philadelphia Eagles that we got to talk about, and number 62, Jason Kelsey. Retires as a Philadelphia Eagle. He's 35 years old. No more tush push for him. I wouldn't say he goes out on top, but he's an all pro. You know what I mean? He's an all pro this season. Unfortunately for him, he was on a bad team and they lose it to Tampa Bay. But he's going to #1 podcast and whatever else he wants to do. So talk a little bit about Jason Kelsey and his career as an Eagle.
I think there aren't many things that you can say about Jason Kelsey that 100 other people have already haven't said. It's like everyone knows what he's meant to this team, to this city even. He'll forever be in that Mummers outfit at the Super Bowl parade. And he will be etched in stone with that. He will never pay for a beer in the city of Philadelphia as long as he lives. He is that guy. And there's very few in all 4 major sports in Philadelphia that you can put him on that level with.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because I was like, the only guy I could probably compare him to in modern Eagles times is Brian Dawkins, a guy who I'm pretty sure he doesn't drink beer. When people just love him, he can go anywhere. And I think a lot of people still remember when he left to go to Denver and they were so upset with the team and all that. Luckily, he came back and he's like that #1 Eagle in terms of he's in Hall of Fame. He's had his number retired. It was very quickly how they did that after his playing days, and I expect the same thing for Jason Kelsey. And in terms of his impact in the NFL, I think he will join Mick Tingelhoff and Jermani Dawson and those guys in the Hall of Fame. Do you think he's a Hall of Famer, or do you think he has to wait?
I think him playing the last 3 years solidified it because there was rumors for years like, is he going to come back this year? Is he going to come back this year? And those other last back end 3 years that he put together and the level at which he played, and especially, and say what you want to about a lot of the Hall of Fame stuff in any sport, it's notoriety, it's popularity,
Right.
not to mention being an outstanding athlete at your position. The fact that he has all those going for him, yes, he's a Hall of Famer.
Right. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the other side. Last Sunday, Fletcher Cox, he decided to hang up his cleats. And, I still remember covering the draft in 2012 when he was drafted. Jim Washburn was talking about what a great addition he was, a guy who would be in the middle for a number of years. And sure enough, he was pretty dominant in the middle of the Eagles' defensive line for a number of years. Three All-Pro selections, I think 6 Pro Bowls. Now, we could talk about his merit in terms of Pro Bowl and Hall of Fame in a second, but just talk about the impact of Fletcher Cox in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles team.
I think Fletcher Cox is one of the most underrated superstars of the Philadelphia Eagles in the past 30 years, maybe 30, 40 years. The way he played at the level in which he played, not that he like in that position, there's not a lot of guys that get a lot of notoriety. They're not, besides people that are in the loop and pay attention to the game. Hey, Fletcher Cox is in a commercial though. He got, you don't see a lot of defensive tackle guys in commercials, and he got that. He was on the member of the 2010s All-Decade team,
Right.
and that's one of the things that doesn't get celebrated as much as well. To be at that level and just be under the radar like he was, and he retired the way that he played. It wasn't some big to do. It wasn't, it was just like, I'm done. this is it. And Fletcher Cox, looking back, people I think will realize more in the upcoming years what he meant to that team and the level in which he played.
Yeah, he was a consummate leader, and it's interesting we talk about these two guys retiring because there were rumors in it, and I've talked to some folks that they were a little upset with some of the younger players in the locker room in terms of they were not accepting their leadership. You know what I mean? Like the young guys were kind of going their own way, and everybody's trying to figure out what happened last season. Obviously, after that 10-1 start, and then they limp home, losing 6 of the last 7 games, and as an older player, and sometimes these guys are like, enough's enough. And they're going to retire in glory. They both have their numbers retired. 62 and 91 will never be worn by anybody for Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I think in terms of Fletcher Cox, it's going to be interesting because Aaron Donald also retired this season. Obviously, Donald a shade better than him in terms of defensive player of the year, etc. But I do think that Kelsey and Fletcher Cox both get into the Hall of Fame.
That's why, and I'm sure we'll get into it later. I just feel like I haven't talked to you in weeks, Lloyd. There's so much I want to talk about out here with this Eagles team. It was huge that Brandon Graham came back. And the guy only plays 15 to 20 snaps. I mean, so be it. The fact that you have another guy from the veteran leadership side of the ball, that's big for that team.
Yeah, and we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. I'm joined, as usual, by Kevin Midget. We're going to go heavy with the Eagles this year. I know there are some fans out there who have other teams, but we're definitely so much to catch up with the Eagles and the moves in free agency. Kevin, I printed out their roster, and I know we looked at this before free agency, but the Eagles really they put the wheels in motion. They're probably going to have about, I'll say, 15 new players on his team. And the big thing is the head coach Sirianni's coming back. Both of us kind of were like, oh boy, but Howie and his staff are loading up Nick Sirianni. They have the draft coming up where the Eagles, they just got a bunch of compensatory picks. They got a third. They got, I think, 3 fifth round picks, and then they have a 6th rounder, all from compensatory draft picks. And now they're picking at the 22nd position. So lots for them to do. And I know you and I said we were going to have some fun looking at the former Eagles first rounders and the misses over the years, but you hope that they can find a quality first round pick at number 22 and or if they're going to move up. But what are you thinking in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles' needs overall going into the draft?
I think they definitely have to do something. I know they're not going to touch a linebacker, the Jerry Robinson 1979 syndrome. Everybody in the whole mid-Atlantic area knows the Jerry Robinson linebacker part. I need a cornerback or a safety on that team. Cornerback would be great, actually. Do something with that. I mean, you lost Maddox as well. He's gone, even though he was injured the whole time. They just need Bradbury, of course. We saw how he was. Slay, we're on the last tread of tires on Slay, I believe, at this point as well. So they need to do something to shore up that spot. Hopefully for the next 5 to 10 years would be nice.
Yeah, and I think defense definitely has to be the area the Philadelphia Eagles have to go for because they averaged right around 25, 26 points a game offensively, but they also allowed 25 points a game defensively. So I know everybody's going to blame it on this old regime and Matt Patricia and the whole thing with Sean Desai, but they were deficient. They just had a lot of guys that were just miscast. They were just not frontline players. And when I look at this defense, now at defensive end, you have Milton Williams. He was a 2021 third rounder. Jordan Davis, who I want to get your opinion on. He was a number 1 pick in 2022. And then they'll have Jalen Carter at the other defensive tackle position, first rounder from last year. It seems for now Hassan Reddick is going to be that pass rusher on the outside. So let's start with the defensive line. Do you think that's enough there? Do you think they go add some more smaller pieces? I know you were talking about Brandon Graham coming back, but the defensive line that's the area Howie loves. Do you think that's where he's going to go?
I hope not. I really do. I hope They don't. Nice moments last year, but he looked like a man of his size. He's out of shape. Let's put it that way. And he
Yeah,
faded on the back end of the season. So unless he puts the dedication into his profession and gets in better shape, he's going to be the same as he was last year.
yeah. So you're gonna yeah. Jordan Davis has got to be a key. He's a guy that they spent that draft pick on and kind of waited on him. And as you said, he wore down over the season. He was possibly one of those guys that Fletcher Cox was talking about in terms of, you know, come on, young fella, come on, get your S together. You know what I mean? Like, and he just was not making any plays in the middle. Now they need him to be a two gapper. So what that means is he's a nose tackle. He needs to be able to take on the guards and the centers, and that'll free up, Jalen Carter next to him, who kind of wore down, in my opinion. Started off like gangbusters, looking like a young Warren Sapp out there. But he kind of, by the end of the season, he was tired. And the NFL game's a lot different from college. In Georgia, he was just dominant. So Jalen Carter, what are you thinking with him? And then also throw him Milton Williams.
Milton Williams, he's a side piece guy. He's one of those guys. He plays some downs. I don't think he's. They could do worse. I'll put it that way. But Milton Williams, he's not really swinging the dial for me at this point. I mean, you sit there though with the rest of the guys. They've got rotational guys. They've got guys in there with the whole Sweat situation and everything as well. I mean, if you have all these guys there, you're going to be okay.
Yeah,
there's no doubt. Nobody's, I don't think, logging huge down.
Yeah, and Sweat did restructure his contract. He's going to be back. We talked about Brandon Graham for now. He's, he came back. He wants to finish career at Philadelphia Eagles, so he'll be there. Now, Hassan Reddick is the wild card. It's the teams, they shouldn't give him away. They should not. I don't know if it's a locker room situation or he's just not getting along with management or what it is, but he's too valuable to kind of just cut him or trade him for. I'll just throw like a sixth round draft pick, which I just think is crazy.
I don't think Hassan Reddick's going to be happy anywhere he goes at this point. He wants to get paid. And I don't think, because he knows it's his last big contract as well. So and I don't begrudge anybody trying to get their money. Never have, never will.
Yeah.
That being said, I believe it's $15 million this year he has due to him. Make him play for that $15 million. Even if he's disgruntled, it's like you can't give him away, like you said, for like a 6th-round pick. Even a 4th-round pick, I'm not giving him away for that. There's no way. And so you have to sometimes play disgruntled guys because he knows he has to play well to get that next contract as well.
Yeah, and a guy I haven't touched on yet, but one of the biggest names, it's the Eagles. Well, big to them, and we're going to wait and see, is on that defensive line / outside linebacker. They're bringing in Bryce Huff, 25-year-old coming from the New York Jets, and they gave him a huge contract, 3 years, $51 million, and if I'm Hassan Reddick and I'm Sweat, I'm like, hey, I've been doing this for another number of years now. Last year, Bryce Huff, could say he's an ascending player. He had 10 sacks, but the more guys I'm talking to are saying he's like a Mark Gastineau type. And I'll throw a terrible name at you. You're going to be like, oh, no. They said Jason Babin, a guy that plays all out.
God, no.
All out on rush to the passer, and he forgets about the run. So, I don't know if you looked at the tape or just what are you thinking of this signing of Bryce Huff?
I was surprised, to be honest. I didn't think they were going to go that route, and the fact that they did. Did they spend more money than you thought they were going to? Sure. And I do see him as that kind of guy, to be honest. I mean, he can rush the quarterback, and that's all you're getting from him. Jason Babin, was it the wide 9 and all that?
That's right. That's right. And he was a jerk, too. He really was. In a locker room, he was surly. He's one of those guys. I used to, I had taken it to the house then, and my guy would go to practice every day, and he would say, my God, this guy's a jerk. He just teammates didn't like him, coaches didn't like him, reporters didn't like him, a very bad name around the organization. So hopefully.
The one thing is, though.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, with Huff, though, the thing you have to look at, you were talking, though, about, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, their contract. these guys aren't going to be the most friendly to him when he gets there. No fault of his own. It's just the situation Huff's walking into right now.
Yeah, that's always fun, Kevin. I used to always go to the first mini camp after the draft and just seeing how all these pieces fit together. It's almost like what we were just talking about, And I remember the year Asante Samuel was signed, and the Eagles they had two corners. They had Lito Shepard, Sheldon Brown, who were veteran guys, and it was almost like, why do we need this guy? You know what I mean? I think Al Harris was there too. You know what I mean? So it was like, we don't need this guy. You could have spent this money in other places, and you can almost see it's like that feeling out period amongst the players. Like, do I really like this guy? Do I trust this guy? You'll never hear about it outside the locker room, but I definitely agree with you that it's like, okay, got to make all these pieces fit together, and now we're talking about. Yeah, Kellen Moore. He has his new scheme. He's going to be bringing in that playbook. Vic Fangio. He seems to be bringing in a 3-4. And you're wondering, is it all going to fit together? And then you can't be remiss talking about the Eagles without talking about Nick Sirianni. Is he ready to wear that CEO cap and make this all fit together?
I think the thing we're going to find out with Nick Sirianni is the fact is he Jason Garrett and a puppet, or is he Mike Tomlin, a guy who manages his coordinators and can run the show? There's a big difference.
A good point.
And I'm leaning more towards the first one of the Jason Garrett at this point. But I hope I'm wrong. But it seems like he's in that situation.
Yeah, and you don't forget he's on the last year of his contract, so it's do or die for Nick Sirianni. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we'll see. And Howie is signing a lot of these guys to 1-year contracts, so it's a put up or shut up kind of year for the Philadelphia Eagles. And at linebacker, it's something we've always talked about. Like they just don't invest in a position. They bring these retreads in, and come on, finally give us something to be excited about now. As I said, they're going to go 3-4. So we talked about the two outside linebackers, Sweat and Reddick and Huff. But in the middle, they're trying to get this Niners kind of look. And the two guys they're going with is Nakobe Dean, who is constantly injured, hasn't really been the same impact player he was at Georgia. And then they just signed Devin White from Tampa Bay, a guy who a couple years ago when the Bucs won the Super Bowl, yes, he was very good, but he's kind of taken a couple steps back. Didn't even really play against the Eagles in that playoff game. What do you think in terms of their inside linebackers?
Well, the thing with Devin White too, you got another 1-year flyer on him. I believe what was he had $7.5 million to sign him for. He's the one thing I like about the 1-year contract is like, all right, this might just be if we like him a lot, he's going to still get paid somewhere else. Well, I wish we would have locked him up. But at the same time, I like the fact that guys have to go out there and prove it. The one thing I have people that I'm friends with that are Steeler fans, and they signed Queen in Pittsburgh. And the thing is, you see a guy sometimes sign that big contract. Is he going to be the same?
Yeah, once they get that money, sometimes the guys just didn't show. I mean, us old Philadelphia guys, I'll bring up Lance Parrish. I remember him signing with the Philadelphia Phillies, and everybody, he was all-star catcher, and he comes here, hurts his back, he's terrible, So it can happen all the time in sports.
Mike Schmidt's workout buddy. Yeah, Mike Schmidt was like, oh, that's my buddy. We work out a lot together. Yeah, we'll bring him in. That worked out great.
Yeah. Continuing around at defense, Darius Slay, it looks like he's coming back. Him and Bradbury are under contract right now. Now, one of them may be a June 1st cut. If I had to put money on it, I think it would be Bradbury. They don't bring back. But, this secondary, we've said, this has got to be the area they should concentrate on in the draft. Maybe a Cooper DeJong out of Iowa, or maybe even Kool-Aid McChristy coming out of Alabama, that cornerback. What are we thinking in terms of this secondary? And can Sidney Brown come back from that injury, as well as Reed Blankenship and his respective injury?
Well, the thing is also with Kool-Aid, by the way, best name in the whole draft. He's had a little bit of injury problems now as well. So he's one of those guys who could slide a little bit, but at the same time, then it makes you think of what Sidney Jones. It's like a guy who was good and then he
Yeah,
had injury problems. So once again, post and past Eagles experience, I want to stay away from anyone who's had injury problems at this point, even if it's minor. I don't want any parts of it. They have to bring in somebody who can tackle. Nobody. Did you watch some of those games last year? Even the
that's a
Tampa Bay
great point.
playoff game. Nobody could tackle at all. It was horrible to watch. I want somebody who's going to put his hat on somebody and just drill them. And that's the kind of defense I want to see. At least make an effort, hit somebody, get dirty, do something.
Yeah, and you're talking about from that secondary. We talked about Brian Dawkins, and you remember the old Eagles guys like Wes Hopkins and Andre Waters. They were in the box. They were making plays. They were showing. I know the NFL's not the same in terms of you can light somebody up like the old days, but you definitely had to have some fear come across the middle, and they have to get somebody back there. As you said, I thought Sidney Brown did a good job in terms of he's a young player, kind of had that hitter mentality, and it's going to be interesting because the Eagles went and signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson to come back. He's going to play nickel back or some safety. He had some great parting words out the door. Now he's back. I guess you pay him enough money, he forgets. But what are we thinking in terms of C.J. Gardner-Johnson coming back to the Eagles?
Oh, Gardner Johnson. Gardner Johnson, with him coming back, it's like some guy who broke up with his girlfriend, then they get back together. It's, no, baby, I didn't mean it. No, you can't believe everything I said. I was just mad at the time. The fans don't forget, man.
Yeah,
It's like they're going to
they're gonna
remember that.
they're gonna boo
You
him for
get
a little bit, no
one
doubt.
time. Yeah. I mean, they had to bring something in, though. They had to do something. Was that the guy? I don't know. But I've never seen a guy blaze his way out and then come
Yeah, it's
back.
crazy.
And it's like, hey, guys. It's, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's just funny to me, to
he
be
didn't
honest.
seem like a Dan Campbell guy, And Dan Campbell
Yeah.
probably told him where.
Also, another, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
go ahead.
exactly. And he wants to do his thing. Gardner Johnson also, once again, tapping into that WWF, WWE mentality. He's that kind of guy. He likes to talk, to be the showman a little bit. And the
Yeah,
fact now, it's like he's got to go do his job now. He's got to punch the clock and do it. He's getting paid well, that's for sure. So he made some coin off this.
yeah, and we talked about tackling. He was not known for his tackling. I know when he was with the Eagles before, he was more of a coverage guy. He had a lot of interceptions, but uh, he was not the guy that was going to tackle in the box. So I do agree with you in terms of that secondary. They got to find some guys back there that can help the linebackers. Obviously, we talked about your deficiencies. You wish you had a Fred Warner that could kind of make all the tackles. But with the linebackers the way they are, they're going to need some guys in the secondary that can come up and make tackles closer to the line of scrimmage. Yeah, Blankenship had a lot of tackles, but they were usually about 10 yards down the field. So defense, I do think that when we look at the Eagles, that's the area that they're going to concentrate on. We'll see about these linebackers, and hopefully with all these picks, second round, third round, they're going to go for a younger linebacker. Of course, we've all talked about Jeremiah Trotter's son is at Clemson. He's slated to go around second, third round. Maybe the Eagles take a look at him, but as you said earlier, I'm just not holding my breath. It's an area, you know, and I'll get your take on it. How frustrating is it that linebacker spot is just not? I was listening to one of the shows in the area. They were talking about the frustration level of they just don't think it's an important position, and it's so important in today's NFL. I know it's a passing league, but let me get your take on that. The linebacker and the lack of stars the Eagles have had there.
The Eagles, and much like most of the NFL, I've noticed the tight ends are huge anymore. They are huge. They are large wide receivers that can run. And that is so important to take away that middle of the field because that's where the Eagles were eaten up last year.
Yeah,
Everyone just knew to go across the middle of the field, and there was no way they could stop them. You have to address it. It's a deficiency in your team, and it's one of the reasons why you went on that run of losses last year was the fact that you couldn't stop anything in the middle. You have to be able to do that. If not, you are not going to win in this league.
yeah, and you saw the two teams that were in the Super Bowl. They had very good linebackers in the middle. Bolton was holding things down for the Chiefs in the middle of the field, making plays. And then obviously the Niners had the best combo out there, Drake Greenlaw and Fred Warner. And you know, you just want somebody, as you said, sideline to sideline that can make some come up, make tackles, but also the coverage is just so important with these tight ends. Guys like Travis Kelce just work in the middle of your field, and you can't allow them to have big games. As you said, there's so many tight ends. Each week, it seemed like you and I were talking like, oh, the tight end had 8 catches and 2 touchdowns this week against the Eagles. So, they definitely get that. If I'm running at the front office, which I always wish I did, that was always my dream job to be the GM of the Eagles.
One day, Lord,
one day. I would definitely look at that secondary and the linebackers. So we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, the Broad Street South Network. We will definitely get into some other things in free agency. Real quick, we'll just look at the Eagles offensive side. We touched on opening the show. We talked about the impact of Saquon Barkley. We'll see how that goes. Now, the Eagles, this signing, we talked about earlier, you and I, that the Eagles need to find a third receiver. And I just don't know if this is a guy. It looks like I'm trying to think who it looks like a guy who's at the end of his career and they're bringing him in. So often we've seen the Eagles do this, Carlos Carson and guys like that, he's going to get his cup of coffee just like Julio Jones did. Devontae Parker coming in as a cap casualty coming from the New England Patriots. And first thing everybody said is no separation for Devontae Parker. So what are you seeing with him?
He's the KS 2.0. There's no difference there. I mean, he's 31, I believe, at least when the season starts. His better years are behind him. His better year, I should say. I shouldn't even pluralize that with years. His one good year. I get you had to bring somebody in. I get it, but at the same time, it's like that's not the answer, not at all. I would have even taken Aguilar back before I would do that.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see if they add to that wide receiver room because right now you have Parker, A.J. Brown, DeMonte Smith, you have Britton Covey, who's more of a return guy, and then you have a bunch of, Joseph Nata, Austin Watkins Jr. Usually I pride myself on knowing players. Some of these guys in the back end of the roster, you're like, man, what is going on there? So I think it would be wise to look at one of the receivers. The receiver's pretty stocked area as well as the cornerbacks in this draft, and they can probably get a difference maker. Now, the offensive line has been the Eagles' calling card for so long. The tush push will be around again. So Jeff Stoutland will try to be working with this pretty much is the same group, but you're going to have Jordan Mailata at left tackle. Landon Dickerson, who they just gave an extension to, will be your left guard for the Philadelphia Eagles. Cam Jurgens, who was second-round pick in 2022, will slide in at center for Kelce. Tyler Steen, a guy I want to get your opinion on. He was a third-rounder last year. Had some good plays, some bad plays. He'll be right guard right now. And then they have Lane Johnson, a veteran. He's seen 2 of his buddies leave, and he's still sticking around, him and Brandon Graham. But what are you thinking in terms of Philadelphia Eagles' offensive line?
I think it's one of those unique plans for the future. With Kelce gone, Lane Johnson, and Lane's had more injury problems than the last couple of years. You can tell he's starting to take the grind of it a little bit. How much does Lane have left in the tank? I think definitely 1, 2. Anything after that, I think it's borrowed time then. So you need to plan for the future as far as that position goes, I believe. And it's an ever-growing thing. It's like as long as Stoutland's there, it's like, okay, we have no problems because he can coach anybody and, coach the offensive line. But at the same time, you got to bring some bodies in. You got to use a draft pick somewhere in the middle maybe. Try to beef everything up. Try to get somebody for down the road.
Yeah, and they did sign Matt Hennessy from the Atlanta Falcons, who guy's a swing guy. He can play some guard, can play some center, so they're bringing him in. But obviously the key is going to be how quickly Jurgens – can acclimate to calling the plays at the line of scrimmage. Protection is going to be huge there at the center position. Obviously, we were talking about Kelce, how invaluable he was, down and distance and understanding what needed to be done in terms of production. So Cam Jurgens is going to have to take care of that. And then Tyler Steen, a guy next to him, they had a lot of runs to that power side behind Kelsey and the other guards there before. So, yeah, I do agree with you that they have to bring in some more depth there, and we'll see how that shakes out. I think they need another tight end too. Kevin, I'm looking at the tight ends. You got Dallas Goddard, and you got a bunch of guys. Guys I see getting cut in training camp. So we talked about the value of tight ends in this league. A lot of teams are going double tight end, and you're seeing that work very well. What do you think about the Eagles' tight end situation?
It was definitely a glaring hole when Dallas Goddard missed time. The position wasn't even there. You might as well have had another offensive lineman in there. It was another. It's another guy to cover AJ and Devontae just to drop back. So they weren't. Nobody was scared of the Eagles tight end at that point. Not that they were. I think Goddard gets underused anyway because he has to stay in and block a lot. I think they need to get somebody who can use that position well. If you look at the double tight ends that you were talking about, look at the monster double tight ends they have in Buffalo with Knox and
Yeah,
Kincaid. You put those
yeah,
guys on double tight ends, you don't even have to worry about the receivers as much at that point because you have
yeah,
Cook and then you have Knox and you have Kincaid and oh yeah, the wide receivers as well. They need to get somebody in there because Goddard misses time as well. You need to have somebody that can fill in at least halfway as well as Goddard can.
yeah, definitely. And Albert O, who they traded for from Denver and didn't really use, he doesn't seem to be an answer. I don't know if he was a doghouse in terms of Sirianni or what. They didn't really even use him. And then Grant Calcaterra, I hope I'm saying that right, 6th-round pick in 2022. He was another guy who was injured coming out of college and just has not seemed to find his stride in the National Football League. So we'll see there. Quarterback, this is the big one. Jalen Hurts, he has a huge contract. I think this year his cap number's not that bad, but he's got to play better. He had way too many turnovers last year, fumbles, interceptions, forcing balls in places where he shouldn't, particularly, double, triple coverage when looking for A.J. Brown. Some people are saying it was kind of Brown complaining to him and he was forcing things there. But, what are we seeing in terms of Jalen Hurts? And I know there's been a lot of chatter about his standing in the locker room. So what are we seeing when we talk about Jalen Hurts?
I think this is a make or break season for Jalen Hurts' legacy and career at this point. He's got the money. He's paid. He's taken care of for the rest of his life. And he has generational money at this point. That being said, as far as being a leader on the field, nobody knows exactly what happened in that locker room. There's a few guys, but they were in the locker room. Is it AJ? Is it Jalen? And you're going to see this year how that has shaken out. Whether Jalen can, even if it, I mean, I'm sure nobody's innocent in what happened that year, last year.
Yeah.
There's nobody that's innocent in that. It's the way he handles the adversity and comes back is going to show what kind of a leader he is.
Yeah, and Kevin, I was talking to a veteran guy that he's a writer. He's been around the team a lot, and I was talking to him like a week or so ago, and he said that fracture kind of was bigger than a lot of people thought between AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, and that kind of Turner season. You know what I mean? And you think about that argument they had on the sidelines, and everything kind of just, yeah, they won a few more games, by hook or crook, but after that, it just seemed to kind of divide the locker room. So both guys are going to be back, and they got to fix that situation.
You mean that whole team building puzzle room night didn't solve everything, all the problems? What? That one night of figuring out, how to get out of a room, an escape room, that didn't do it? Yeah, I mean, it's not even guys in sports. Anybody in any profession, you have egos involved, and it's how you mesh with those egos. You don't have to get along with everyone you work with. The thing is, you have to find a way to make the job work, and that's what they have to find.
Yeah, no, I do. I definitely agree with you. And a big change coming at the quarterback position. See Marcus Mariota. He signed, Washington signed him, which is just so surprising. But the Eagles bring in Kenny Pickett. He's a South Jersey kid. Went to the University of Pittsburgh. He was the only quarterback taken in the first round, I think, in 2021. But he kind of flamed out with the Steelers. He only had 13 total touchdowns in 2 seasons as a starter there. Last year, replaced by Mason Rudolph. And a lot of people I'm talking to said he was thoroughly surprised to be traded, number one, and then Philadelphia of all places. And he still wants to be a starter. He has that mentality. So what are you thinking when it comes to Kenny Pickett coming to the Eagles?
Kenny Two Gloves, the man has hands the size of a 7-year-old. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They had talent on that Steelers team. They had wide receivers. They had running backs. But you needed a backup quarterback. McKee can't be your backup quarterback. Pickett at least has experience in starting, and I do want to hear that he wants to be a starter. If we got a guy who said, "Yeah, I love being a backup," no, I don't want you. I want somebody that wants to play. One of the things, though, about Justin Fields, the rumor mill about Philadelphia and everything else, is they couldn't imagine the Jalen Hurts psyche if he had a few bad games and how the fans would just chant for Justin Fields. And I imagine it's after that whole Wentz Foles, fiasco and everything else.
Yeah.
Are we worried about Jalen Hurts' sensitivity is why we didn't go give up a 6th-round pick for Justin Fields?
Yeah, and that's a good segue. We'll shut down talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, so we went heavy on them in the first part of the show on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Broad Street South Network. I'm here with Kevin Midget, and we're just talking about free agency and a variety of topics. And yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers were active with Russell Wilson. They had him in for a visit right after he got cut by the Denver Broncos, and they said, "Thank you very much." The Steelers signed Russell Wilson on a 1-year deal only for $1.2 million. Obviously, the Denver Broncos still owe him $39 million this season, so he's not worried about that. But talk about what the Steelers have done bringing in Russell Wilson.
They're trying, and that's what you want to see from your franchise. Say what you want to. Mike Tomlin, what's he always do? Finish 500 or better. He's going to have that team ready. And the fact that they realize that you got to give them credit. It's like they drafted Pickett. It was a 1st-round pick. It's like, yeah, this isn't going to work out. So we got to go in a different direction here. You get Russell Wilson on the cheap for this year. Not cheap for Denver. That's going to be kicking them for another year after this one. But cheap for Pittsburgh. And then you go in and get Justin Fields, who could possibly be your future. You get Fields with Wilson for 1 year, and Wilson's an older guy. If he gets hurt, bam, you pop Fields in right there. I think it was a great move by Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and Russell Wilson last year he was not as bad. I do a lot of shows with another guy, and he just telling me how bad Russell Wilson was. Yeah, he had a tough year, and he's showing Peyton in terms of personality conflict stuff, but his numbers were not that bad. Threw for over 3,000 yards. 26 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, and that was despite an offensive line that was very leaky. So I do think that's a good signing for the Steelers. He's a veteran guy. Let's not forget they made the playoffs last year. Yeah, they got pretty much throttled once they got to the playoffs, but he gives them an opportunity to be a caretaker of the football, and then he throws a great deep ball, which Pickens will like. And they're very explosive. They just signed Van Jefferson as well, so I thought that was a great signing. Now, let's jump back to what we were talking about in terms of Justin Fields. A lot of people were clamoring for the Eagles to make that move. It seemed like a good fit for the Eagles because he has the legs, he can run, he can throw. Very similar to Jalen Hurts. Obviously, not as accurate and not as good passer, but the Steelers get him, as you said, for a 6th-round pick, and they get the opportunity for him to maybe stick around long term and develop there. So what are we thinking when we talk about Justin Fields?
I think with Justin Fields, you have a lot of untapped potential, and nobody wins with that Chicago Bears. That team stinks. That franchise stinks, and we'll see what happens when Caleb Williams goes there and his father dictates what kind of offense they should be running. Because the best thing that ever happened to Justin Fields was getting the hell out of Chicago. So hopefully he gets under the right coordinators, the right system. He has the tools. He can do it. But I think sitting for a year and watching someone else do it will take the pressure off him a little bit as well, where he can get his feet under him and he can find. And like you said, the weapons matter a lot. You have 2 good running backs there. You have Van Jefferson was a nice signing for them because they lost Deontay Johnson. So you went there and you got him
Yeah.
with Pickett rather, George Pickens. So you have the receivers there and Fryermuth the tight end. So for him to sit back for a year, I think it could be the best thing for him.
Yeah, and we'll see how all that works out. And you talk about the Bears. You're right. They have those two first round draft picks, and everybody's excited about that. But they're another team. Matt Eberflus, he survived. He was a coach that was very much in the hot seat. Ryan Poles, their general manager, he's on the hot seat. Yes, they have the number one pick. They seem like Caleb Williams for sure is going to come there, and then they also have the number 9 overall pick. So their cupboard's pretty full. And then they once again they were very active in free agency, signing players and changing their roster a lot. But as you said, there's just some kind of a cloud of stigma around that Bears franchise. Maybe they, sold their soul to the devil in 1985 to get that Super Bowl, and they haven't done much ever since then.
No, they got to the Super Bowl with a sexy Rexy Grossman year, and that was about it when Urlacher and them. But yeah, for the most part, since '85, they've done absolutely nothing. I do like the fact for one part when they first got Keenan Allen, I was like, oh okay, but that's like Keenan
Yeah,
Allen has some age on him now as well,
32.
and he's going to have a rookie quarterback throwing to him. Yeah, he's going to have a rookie quarterback throwing to him. They went and got Swift at running back, but they have nothing but running backs there that are pretty much around the same level. Swift is probably the best of the bunch now. It's Chicago. Until I see anything different, they're going to be irrelevant to me.
Yeah, and their offensive line's always been kind of leaky. They have not had a group up front there that has done a solid job for them. It's always bad pass protection. They can't run the football. And then when you talk about the NFC North, Green Bay, and also the Detroit Lions are the class of that division. So, the Bears making a lot of changes. God bless them. But we'll see if they're able to catch those two teams. And you know, you talked about Caleb, and I was talking about Caleb Williams last week with Javon Alford, who pinch hit. Um, this whole Caleb Williams situation reminds me a lot of here in Philadelphia, Eric Lindros and the Flyers. You know what I mean? Is this going to be a situation where his parents are overly involved in the front office? Is going to get sick of him and be like, you know what, bleep this guy. So, he's coming there kind of dictating right off the bat. I think a couple shows back, you said that you had some apprehension about Caleb Williams, but what are you thinking in terms of him? He did not throw at the combine. He refused to get measured at the combine. I'm like right away. I'm like, easy, young fella. That you got to come in and pay your dues. So, what are you thinking with Caleb Williams?
I think another one like Eric Lindros's father is LeVar Ball when Lonzo came into the
Oh,
league.
good comparison. Yeah,
And the thing is, everyone will listen to somebody's dad talk as long as they produce and they're good. Once your kid starts to stink, they don't care what you have to say. When was the last time you saw LeVar Ball say anything? Lonzo's been out for about a year, 2 years. LaMelo's had injuries. Anthony can't even get into the G League hardly. So his big baller Brown disappeared. So Caleb Williams' dad, he can pound his chest a little bit. Once Caleb starts not performing on the field, then it'll be an issue.
yeah. And we can get into top of the draft soon, and um, you know, in terms of looking at the other free agents out there and what happened, and we'll continue that. We're talking with Kevin Midget on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, brought you South Network. Um, Chris Jones, I was kind of surprised. I thought it was important for the Chiefs to re-sign him, and they give him a 5-year deal. Um, the Chiefs are loading up. They get Marquise Brown coming over from the Cardinals, Chris Jones. So, what are we thinking in terms of that Jones signing and the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs?
I think Kansas City had no other option but to sign Chris Jones. He was a catalyst for that Super Bowl team. And if they would have let him go, that would have been a huge hole for them to fill. I don't think they could have done that. He was a guarantee they had to lock him up. Hollywood Brown, on the other hand, I once again the Kansas City receiver factor, who they really needed. I mean, you're bringing your Kadarius Tonys and guys like that. They just find a way to win. You got Pacheco back again. Edwards Hilaire, he's been a bust for the most part you've seen. If you got Patrick Mahomes, you can win. You just need that defense to stand up, and that's why they needed to lock up Chris Jones.
Yeah, and Spagnuolo was very happy to get him back, and you put him with Bolton, and we'll see about L'Jarius Sneed. They franchise tagged him. That's going to be tough to get all that underneath the cap. Now, one of the things Patrick Mahomes did do reminded me of Tom Brady a lot. He restructured his contract, and he said, move that money forward. I'm not worried about all that. And just talk about the restructuring of the contract and what it says about what the Chiefs are doing.
I think it's definitely one of those things. If you want to win as the leader of this team, you have to defer some money. You got to give some of it back. If not, you're not going to have a team you can win with, i.e., Joe Flacco with the Baltimore Ravens. Joe Cool took every dollar. They had to let guys walk away.
Yeah.
He's like, nah, this is my money. Nah, we got our Super Bowl. He took and kept every dime, and that henceforth that team didn't go back. So you see guys do that. I remember back in the day also, I believe like Steve Young and the Aikmans and everyone else, they would take less money so the team would have more money they could spend on other guys. And you have to do that if you want to win.
Yeah, definitely. And the cap's going up. So, Andy Reid and then the general manager there, Brett Veach, they understand that they need to spread around to other people. And each team has approximately $329.4 million. That's with the bonuses they're allowed to give and also the cap money. So, a lot of money. They're going to spread that around. But as you said, the Chiefs are moving in the right direction. They're trying to get that three-peat. You wonder if they're able to do it. It's just so tough. We hadn't seen a back-to-back champion since 03, 04. Do they even have a chance at the three-peat, which would be unprecedented around the NFL?
Yeah, of course they do. If you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Andy Reid. And Patrick Mahomes showed last year for the first time he can win playoff games on the road as well. That guy's unflappable. He has a mindset where other people in the big games, their eyes are darting all over the field, the stands, everywhere else. He's got blinders on, and he's just focused on winning those games in the big moment. And not a lot of guys can do that. So as long as you have Patrick Mahomes and that defense is solid, sure, they got a shot.
Yeah, they do. I believe so. And I think everybody's going to have to put up with the Swifties more too, because everybody's saying that's real. And Travis is coming back, and he's staying with his girl. So everybody that was upset about that, they're just going to have to put up with it. But one of the other big free agents we got to talk about this, Kevin, is this guy's made more money than anybody. It's unbelievable. Kirk Cousins goes to the Atlanta Falcons on a 4-year, $180 million contract, $50 million signing bonus, $100 million guaranteed. He's made more money than Tom Brady in his career. It's unbelievable for a guy that I think he has a handful of playoff victories. What do you think? Good move, bad move? Kirk Cousins signed for Atlanta Falcons.
I actually think for Atlanta that was a good signing. I think Atlanta has some weapons as well. And say what you want to about Kirk Cousins, he does two things. One, he cashes checks. Thanks to Washington for franchising him all those years, his back-to-back years. He cashes checks, but he hangs some numbers. He hangs regular season numbers. Mind you, they don't translate into postseason numbers, but he hangs regular season numbers. And the thing I have to worry about now is if you're with Minnesota, you're going to have some disgruntled guys up there because they're not going to get the ball now. They don't have a quarterback, and they're going to probably draft one, and Jefferson's not going to be happy at all up there.
You mean Sam Darnold's not going to be happy?
I don't think so. I don't think so. You know why? Because he went to USC. Caleb Williams, talking to you.
Yeah, it's crazy. Kirk Cousins, but Captain Kirk, he says and does all the right things, and you're right. He's going to a very good situation there. Raheem Moore is the new head coach. Zach Robinson coming over as offense coordinator. They're going to be able to spread that football around to Kyle Pitts and John Robinson, Drake London. So they have a lot of weapons there at the Atlanta Falcons. And you talk about that NFC South, very winnable division. Yes, the Tampa Bay Bucks kind of brought the whole crew back. They bring Mike Evans back and Baker Mayfield. We can touch on that in a second. But I just think that the Atlanta Falcons are making some good, solid moves there. what did you think about in terms of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? They bring Baker Mayfield back on a deal. They give Mike Evans a 2 year, I think, worth $50 million or so, and they have their two main catalysts for their offense back. They also signed Levante David. We talked about how they let them white walk to the Eagles, and they're also bringing back Antoine Winfield Jr. on the franchise tag.
I think they did the right thing bringing all those guys back. That being said, I don't think you're winning anything with Baker Mayfield. I just think he's a mid to bottom tier quarterback that if you're lucky, you could win your division. You could play a horrible Eagles team in the first round. I think that's the ceiling for them. I think that's as far as they can go with him at quarterback.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you that he had a great season last season in terms of it was a rebirth for him, but it's his fourth team that he's been on, and he's always kind of been an overachiever. He was a walk on 2 times in college. He did win the Heisman Trophy, but I just never understood why he was the first overall pick, and he had a couple good years with the Browns, but he puts the ball in harm's way too much, and he's just not a true difference maker at the quarterback position, kind of what you were saying. So, to bring him back, more power to them. Todd Bowles, he's able to stick around. Another coach who's immediately going to be on a hot seat starting next season, and we'll see how that NFC South shakes out. One of the other ones I want to talk about was Brian Burns. He's got a new mailing address. He was a guy that a lot of people were looking at in terms of maybe the Eagles would take a look at him last year. Had an okay season. He's 25 years old. He had 32 tackles, 8 sacks. He's going to go. He goes in a. I don't think the Giants broke the bank to get him. So, the Giants. Everybody was crying about Saquon, and they bring in Brian Burns. So, what are you thinking there?
I think the Giants are going to challenge the Bears to see who stinks more. No, it's the Giants. I don't understand what they are doing. The money that they spent for wide receivers over the last couple of years, thank you, Kenny Galladay and a couple other stiffs in there. And they sit there and they let Saquon walk. You give Danny Dimes all this money. They don't know what they're doing. And that's evident that they don't know what they're doing. And I also love the fact, too, Dallas isn't spending a dime hardly. And it's one of those, they spent so much money, they're invested so much into like a handful of guys, there's not many moves that they can even make.
Yeah, the Dallas Cowboys, I think maybe Stephen Jones, who's the CEO, is kind of finally vetoing his father, who's getting up there in age, but they did stand pat. They really have not done a lot in terms of free agency. I'm looking at their they got to kind of redo Dak Prescott's contract, but Dallas is another team. They're kind of like, all right, this is a make or break season. We're bringing everybody back, but we're going to blow this thing up if it does not work. And I tend to agree with you that it's not going to, work out here. You got Dan Quinn who left, and you got Mike Zimmer coming in. They're trying to go back to the future with him. They let Teron Smith. He ends up going, leaving a free agency, and they also had Tony Pollard leaving free agency as well. I tend to agree with you that the Dallas Cowboys may be in a little bit of trouble here because Vander Esch just retired as well with a neck injury. So what are you thinking when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, and can they – there hasn't been a repeat champion in the NFC East since 03-04. So what are you thinking in terms of Dallas?
I think the Eagles are due. I think the Eagles are due at this point. The Giants and the Washington football team commanders there, they are no threat whatsoever. They both are not a threat. Dallas, they're locked up in their quarterback. They have so much money in that quarterback, and if their defense doesn't hold teams, I don't know if they can score enough points. They don't have a running back. They have nobody that can run the ball as of right now, of any note, we should say, and they have to go get somebody. So unless they do that, I'm not overly concerned about the Dallas Cowboys at this point.
Yeah, Dallas is a pass-heavy team. They do have Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb in their receiving core, but their offensive line has gotten older, and you wonder, are they going to be able to replace guys? Zach Martin's been there a long time, since 2014. Can he hold up another year? They lost their center who went over to Washington. And Dak Prescott, we know about his inconsistencies, especially in the playoffs. So I tend to agree with you that Dallas has some rebuilding to do, but they're in a bad cap situation. And I keep saying over and over again, they're not going to do anything until they. Jerry Jones should not be their owner slash general manager. Enough already with him trying to run deals. This is not the 1990s. You know what I mean? I've heard that Jimmy Johnson, since they were able to put him in a Ring of Honor, maybe back to advise him, but Jerry Jones just will not listen to anybody. And until he lets a football man run that team, they are a complete mess.
I would like to speak for the city of Philadelphia when I say that Jerry Jones should be involved in all decisions and make them all on his own. I think he's a genius. I think he's doing great things for that franchise. Nah, he definitely needs somebody else in the room with him at all times making decisions.
Yeah, it's incredible. I was talking to Javon last week about this. At my family reunion, there are a lot of Dallas, Philadelphia people there, and you have the Eagles fans on one side of the family, you have a few Dallas Cowboys stragglers, and lately the Cowboys fans, there's not much they could say because they just, even if they do well, they've had a couple 13-win seasons. You know how the story ends every time. It's a car wreck in the playoffs, and they just are not going to ever get over that hump. So, and they pick late in the draft all the time. And they're picking at number 24. So at that spot, they're probably going to have to look and see what falls to them. Obviously, they need, as we were saying, they may need a running back. Their secondary is very beat up, and they have guys coming off of injuries all over the place in their secondary. And then they need to find a linebacker. They did sign Eric Kendricks, but with Van Der Esch retiring, they got to find somebody to play linebacker for him.
Before we run out of time, Lloyd, there is a few things that I did want to throw
Yeah, go ahead.
out there before we get down the NFC rabbit hole here. One is, what the hell is Harbaugh and the Chargers doing out there? Are they in a rebuild at this point, a full rebuild? Keenan Allen's gone, Eckler, and then Mike Williams as well, who has been injury riddled. So you leave Herbert, your young stud quarterback, with an undersized Palmer. Outplays his size, don't get me wrong. But number one pick was Quentin Johnson. And now it's like that's who you're leaving all your trust in right now. I don't understand what they're doing.
Yeah, the LA Chargers, that's a good team to talk about. In terms of they're picking the number 5 position, you would think they're going to go for Malik Neighbors, the receiver coming out of LSU, if he's there available to them. They spent money in a lot of bad spots in terms of their safeties and some other guys. Now they have readjusted some contracts with Khalil Mack. He restructured his deal, and Joey Bosa is going to restructure his deal as well for them. But you got Harbaugh coming in there, and Jim Harbaugh. He's going to be very loud, and he's going to want things his way. So some of these older veterans, they may like it or leave it type situation, especially coming to training camp. It's probably going to be a harder camp than was run in years past, and he's going to find out who wants to play for them. But Justin Herbert, you do kind of have to feel for him because he's a good, young, solid quarterback. And the offensive line's always been kind of leaky. Yes, they have Rashawn Slater there, who's a very good young lineman, but not a lot because you talk about Mike Williams leaving, Eckler, and then they trade Keenan Allen, as we talked about earlier. That was his security blanket. So a lot of changes there with that team. New GM, new coach, and we'll just see how they work out. The draft is April 25th through the 27th in Detroit, and it's going to be an interesting draft because, as we look at the top order of the draft, you figure it's going to go Chicago. They're taking Caleb Williams. Now, what do you think in terms of Washington? Do they go? Everybody's talking about Jaden Daniels from LSU, or do they go Drake May there?
I think it's definitely going to be quarterbacks. You're going to probably lose, if I'm not mistaken here, at least 3 quarterbacks right out of the jump for the most part. 3 of the top 6 picks are probably going to be quarterbacks. And then you got McCarthy as well is going to be around there. there's everyone just they reach for the quarterback because you can't win in this league without a good starting quarterback. So henceforth, these guys will reach. They'll make somebody's going to do make a great trade and get some draft picks just to fall back a couple spots because they're all worried about someone else getting their guy. If you're looking at this list right now, I guarantee you there's only one good quarterback that comes out of this, two max. But you know what? They're all
Yeah.
going to get taken in the first round.
And you have everybody, everybody's talking about, oh, Lloyd, you're not talking about the combine enough and all that stuff. But, whoever tears it up there and it's a roll of the dice with the draft nowadays. Most of these kids we've seen since high school, a lot of them are 4 or 5 star recruits and this and that. But sometimes kids' games don't equate from high school to college and let alone to the National Football League because it's a job. You know what I mean? And a lot of them have been stars ever since their 7-on-7 days. Going to all these quarterback camps and all this stuff. But you have to put the work in. We've seen so many of these young quarterbacks, as you said, come in the league, and they're not delivering as promised. Everybody's talking about, their ball velocity coming out of their hand and all that stuff. But to me, if they can't read a defense and play cool under pressure, these young quarterbacks just, I'm not interested. You know what I mean?
Well, you got to think a lot of these kids now, they're coming in with their NIL money. They're not coming in like broke
Oh
college
boy,
kids anymore. It's like I've already
yeah,
gotten paid a little bit. I've already got paid a little bit. So, maybe I don't know. I'm not going to say the hunger's not there, the desire, but the pressure of performing maybe isn't there as much.
yeah. And then in terms of, you start wondering with that NIL money and the transfer portal and all that stuff. It's just sometimes it stunts their development. All this moving around and the changing of coaching staffs in the world that the college football is today. So, one other thing that I wanted to, what other you had a topic you said you wanted to go over with me? What you said you had?
Oh, just one more.
Yeah,
I'll do this as a quick burst.
that's all
All
right.
right, the favorite pickup of the week, I should say. Josh Jacobs going to Green Bay. I think Green Bay is setting themselves up very well for the future. That's for sure. Another one I want to throw out real quick
Yeah,
is Aaron Jones going to Minnesota. I think Aaron Jones is done. I think he's on the back end of that one. And I do like the fact that he's playing in the same division. I like that little rivalry fact. It's just like Saquon with the Eagles and the Giants. And the last one I want to throw out here is Gardner Minshew. That guy finds work too while he's at it. He's competing for a starting quarterback job. Good for him.
he always does, man. He have plenty of money to buy his jorts now, man. So, that definitely the Raiders bringing him in and Jimmy G. They tell him take a hike, and he found a landing spot today. I can't remember where it was, but I did definitely think that was some exciting moves there. One I'll throw one at you, and you're down in this area. I love Derrick Henry signing with the Baltimore Ravens. I think he's a power back. You put him in Lamar Jackson, and they're going to get back to some smash mouth football there.
I like the signing myself, and it was one of those in these parts, I should say. It was definitely rumored that was going to happen. He fits in that scheme with that team and the offense that they run. My only concern is running backs just seem to always get hurt with Baltimore. They lose 2 or 3 a year. So Baltimore's also lost their backup quarterback as well with Lamar's injury history. So that's something they're going to have to fill a void with.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, and there's a couple other ones. Let me see. We talked about Russell Wilson. Josh Allen comes back with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had to re-sign him. He's not happy about it. Talk about the whole franchise tag effect and how players they sometimes they plan her, but it just creates just a lot of mayhem behind it.
You have to basically put these guys in a position where it's like, I don't want to pay you even though I know that you're worth X amount of dollars. I am legally I have to pay I can pay you this much and that's it. They know that they're worth more money, but yet you want them to show up with a smile on their face because you're underpaying their value at the time. And the NFL, more than any other sport, it's a short shelf life to make your money.
Yeah, it is. It is, and so often it's not for long league, and that's why I never begrudge anybody when they. I remember talking to Keith Jones one time. He said, "I'm still getting paid by the Flyers." You know what I mean? Because and these guys their money's guaranteed. Baseball, hockey, basketball. But these football players, there's basically a series of 1 year contracts. So they're all, that's why they get so upset with these franchise tags, because they're not getting that signing bonus, and they're guaranteed, yeah, the guaranteed money's for 1 season, but it's not that huge payday. And unfortunately, we're seeing way too many of these players lose money, and then they're in bad situations. I'm hearing right now Adrian Peterson's kind of in a bad money wise situation, and you're hearing that too often with a lot of these players.
It is unfortunate, like you said. The other sports, you have that guaranteed money. Derek Coleman used to play for the Sixers and the Nets. I mean, he was the one guy. He would sign a big contract, put on weight for 2 to 3 years, play one good season, get another big contract, and then that would be guaranteed again. The NFL, you get that rookie contract, and you get that short window to set yourself up for the rest of your life, for the most part. And some guys don't even get that opportunity with injuries.
Yeah, and it always makes me think of Happy Bobby Bonilla Day. What's it coming up soon? Where Bobby Bonilla he spread it out. What's he
like
get?
That's around June 1st.
Yeah, he always gets that money for the Mets. He spread it out, and now he's older guy, and it worked out for him because they were talking about future earnings and everything, and we'll see how that works out. And getting until we get to the draft, though, I was just wondering. So the arena football's back, yes or no, Kevin? Would you go watch it? It's starting April 27th. The Soul's back playing at the Wachovia or whatever they're calling that place. And the NFL Network's actually going to show some of the games. So what do you think of arena football?
It's not my bag. I'm not going to sit there, and make fun of it or anything like that. I'll leave it on the background of the TV just to give you that little football fix that you need. But I do remember when the Soul won a championship, I was watching the games once they got to the playoffs because I was like, all right, because Philadelphia hadn't won a championship in forever. So let's try to get the Soul, and that would count, So it's not my thing, but I hear it's a great experience to actually go to the game and everything else as well. It's a lot cheaper for families to take their kids to go see an arena football game as opposed to trying to go to a game at the Link.
Yeah, definitely, because now taking your family to a game. I remember I took my sons to the game last year. It cost $50 just to park a car. that was just parking, and then my son wanted something to eat. Next thing you know, it's I think a chicken Pete's crab fries is $20 down there at the Link. So, you were going to spend your money, and it's as you said, fan friendly and all that. I covered a couple games early in the Soul's existence, and it was just fun to just go down there. But yeah, for the most part, I won't be watching that. And then also on tap soon is the United Football League. So they merged the USFL and XFL. They're starting March 30th. The games are actually going to be on Fox, ABC, and ESPN. Are you watching?
Once again, background noise in the background. It's not anything I'm really paying attention to. I mean, talk about the history of the XFL. What's the one thing that you can remember? He hate me. That's all you can remember from the XFL. Right. That's all you can remember. It was great marketing by him, but that was it. And background, it's all background. That's all it is.
Yeah. And as I said, the draft will be April 25th through the 27th. We'll go heavy into the draft next show, and we'll kind of look at some of these prospects and another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football with Kevin Midget on 102.9 The Game, Broad Street South Network. So glad everybody was able to join us. Great job, my angel behind the scenes producing it. And thanks for hanging with us again, Kevin. And did you have any parting shots before I close?
Let's just bring the draft on and try to get some secondary linebacker help for this Eagles team.
There we go. All right. So hopefully Howie's listening. I hear that he watches this show. So maybe he'll make some changes that we talked about. So another great week on Lloyd Vance Inside Football. Thanks for joining. Talk to you later.